So this is another MaintainX masterclass where we empower maintenance professionals and industry leaders like yourselves with knowledge and best practices through innovation, efficiency, and global excellence. So today we'll be discussing how to increase efficiency with standardization. I will be one of your hosts along with Nathan and Joe, and we'll get into some intros right after this next slide. So first question, yes, this masterclass is being recorded and you will receive a copy right after this webinar. So keep an eye out for that recording in your inbox. And if you have questions, please go to the Q&A box on the right side of your screen to submit your questions. Not in the chat, even though we love chat conversations, please feel free to add to the discussion. But if you have a specific question, the Q&A box is going to be the best place to submit that. And our team of experts will be there and happy to answer your questions. And then finally, for those of you who are joining us today via our gift promotion, please check your inbox later this week for an email regarding eligibility. We won't be answering any specific questions around the gift promotion in this webinar today. Great. So I will kick off the introductions. I'm Simone. I lead the product marketing function here for our multi-site solutions, as well as a number of core features that many of our customers use every day. One of my favorite parts of this job is helping our customers find the right feature to solve their challenges and understand all the cool things that they can do with that feature, sort of like discovering new things about your favorite tool in your toolbox. So that's me. And then I'm going to pass this along to Nathan, and he can tell you a bit about himself.
Thanks, Simone. Yeah, like Simone said, my name's Nathan. I lead product for our multi-site management standardization team, as well as our core work execution team. I spent 12 plus years building software in all sorts of domains, but only recently came into CMMS and manufacturing. Excited. Standardization is near and dear to my heart, given the areas of the product that I work on. So really excited to dig into that with Joe. And with that, I'll pass it to you, Joe.
Thanks, Nathan. As he said, I'm Joe Rizzardi. My title is a reliability and project engineer. I've been with Hawkins about 9 years. The first 7 as a plant manager, boots on the ground type role, and these last 2 as an engineer doing capital projects, various small to large projects. And my main one has been working with MaintainX, now is responsible for implementing, training, and monitoring MaintainX at all these sites at Hawkins. We started with 7 sites, and we got about 7 or so more to go, ranging from all over the states.
Great. Okay, so now we are going to move on to our live Q&A. I will stop sharing my screen so that you can get a sense of our interactions and our expressions. So let's bring it to the Q&A portion of the best part of this whole thing. So with Nathan, I'll let you get us started.
Yeah, for sure. Joe, thanks so much for being here and joining us today. It's been great to work with you so far. Maybe you can, just to start us off, you can tell us a little bit more about Hawkins. What do you guys do? What the size of the company, number of facilities, et cetera, things like that.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. We are a chemical manufacturing company. We make a lot of different products, ranging from water treatment products to food grade products to pharmaceutical grade products. And we have about 15 or so manufacturing sites, and they range in different varieties of product size and even quality regulations. But we all use this very similar assets, I would say. Centrifugal pumps, stainless tanks, poly tanks, heat exchangers, filters, piping, etc. All of these require some level of preventive maintenance as well.
Got it. And can you tell me a little bit more about your role at Hawkins and kind of what you oversee?
Yeah, like I said, I do a various amount of small projects, side projects, capital projects, where and the big one I've been doing is overhauling our preventive maintenance program. So I researched with the help of a few people I know Rachel Forrest is on the line here, and she's been helping me a lot, but we've researched a lot of programs, and we came across MaintainX, which has been phenomenal for us. We love working with you guys. And we've rolled out this program at 7 or so sites right now. Yeah.
Awesome.
Great. I'd love to follow up on what you just
Yeah.
said. So you mentioned you have your hand in a number of different projects, which I'm sure a lot of our customers and people on this call can relate to. But would love to know a bit more about, like, when did the idea of improving efficiency with standardization become a focus for you and your team? Was that, something you always wanted to prioritize, or did something specific, like a challenge, come up that made that more important?
We've always had some level of standardization, but not really a great way to capture it throughout all of our plants across all these different locations. And I wouldn't say there's any specific challenge that brought this to light, just the right leadership in place to help steer us in this direction over the last few years. My reliability position is kind of the first of its kind here, which is a testament to Hawkins and my leaders trying to prioritize this concept. So this has been, again, my main role to try to overhaul our maintenance program and roll it out to all these sites and standardize everything.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and awesome to hear how your team really was rowing in the right direction, in the same direction, to make this standardization effort a reality. Could you talk a little bit about what the problems that you were facing, even before this was something that got a lot more attention, I would say, but things that you were seeing before standardization started to happen, that you're looking to solve with that?
Sure. Yeah, I think the one of our big problems is that we have uh, there was a wide range of PMs done on a single piece of equipment. For example, we have cooling towers at many facilities, all from the same manufacturer. So at one facility, there would be no PMs. To a different facility where we have several PMs, which doesn't make a lot of sense considering they're the same piece of equipment. I know there are other factors at play, but uh, we're I'm trying to implement those practices, bring the practices from the areas with no PMs to get that level of standard out. Educate the maintenance guys, the plant managers, the operators, and to help roll that out.
I'm curious, Joe, on that also. When you saw that discrepancy in maintenance, strategy,
Mhm.
did you guys notice any sort of downstream impact from that in those plants as well, like correlated with that, in terms of volume of downtime or break fixes required or anything like
I would
that?
say, yeah. Not really able to quantify it, but there's
Sure.
definitely a level of reactive maintenance mindset at
Yeah,
those facilities versus where there are more PMs and it's more structured there.
got it. Got it. And I imagine that reactive maintenance net ended up being more expensive in one way or another than
Yeah,
structured.
yeah. The repair and maintenance budget fluctuates a lot at those facilities. Yeah.
Makes sense. So people use a lot of features, and I know we have folks on this call who are MaintainX customers, and some who are interested in MaintainX, maybe don't use it. But people use a lot of different features in MaintainX to standardize their operations: work order templates, categories, automations. I know one of our newer features that you and I actually worked on a little bit together was global procedures.
Yep.
You were an early adopter of ours, and gave us some good early feedback. Um, what are the key things? How have you used MaintainX specifically to create more consistent operations?
I mean, you've touched on it. We created a plethora of SOPs, standard operating procedures in MaintainX pertaining to that particular piece of equipment or PM or inspection. And the global procedure library, which you mentioned, has been integral in that. where we have, like I said, a lot of similar assets everywhere. So we create one procedure in the global procedure library and roll it out, and it's standardized in nature, just like that.
That's awesome.
Great. And I feel like we're kind of bringing this forward already naturally. So, if this is just let me know, Joe, if we've already covered it. But when you want to think about like how you decided where to focus your efforts first, you mentioned the PM program. Is there anything more you'd add to that when you were devising the plan, right? To
Yeah,
improve this.
yeah, we use like a risk-based method on deciding more where to focus on first. Like I said, we have many different manufacturing facilities, and those different facilities create and or store very hazardous products, one of which being chlorine. So chlorine has a lot of regulations behind it and safety implications behind it. So we focus on those plants holding those particular hazardous products first. And then we almost drilled down even further within those plants on those particular hazardous product assets. So for chlorine, we have gas detectors that need calibration, and all the piping needs to be inspected, and regulating bodies that need to verify this. So the more regulated the product, the more documentation is needed from an audit side, from a regulatory perspective side, and we're using MaintainX to house all this information and organize it all.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Joe, it sounds like of your plants that you've onboarded to MaintainX, you kind of started with one and identified kind of the key pieces to standardize and implement for that one, and then rolled those standards out to the other sites.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And after several plants, each plant we learned something new, and we would go back to modify, or at times it felt like there was two steps back, one step forward. But I think over the last year or so, we've made a lot of good progress.
Yeah. I think you actually answered the follow-up question I was going to have for that, which is how did that actually go? I think what we've seen when we talk to our customers is that it often works like that. You have this grand vision of exactly how you want to standardize, and you can't create a program and roll it out everywhere at once and expect it to work perfectly. There's real world implications. It's very much an iterative process. And I think it works well too, because it can be quite overwhelming to try and do this at a large scale. I'm curious, as you devise kind of the rollout process, how did MaintainX help you, and what role did MaintainX play in devising that plan?
They have been very helpful and willing to help throughout every step of this project. Even at the start of this, when I was working with the salesman to educate myself on how all this worked. And we have a implementation consultant with MaintainX, and we have an account manager where we have monthly meetings that we get together, and we do check-ins on how things have been going on the implementation side, what plants are next, and they help me set things up and copy paste over from other facilities. They can even help enter some of the asset information if we provide the specific workbook information. And there's been quite a few just niche problems that I've brought up to them, and I've been very impressed with how involved they have been, and working with me to try to resolve all these issues.
That's really great to hear.
Mhm.
I'll definitely pass that on to your total account team, because I'm sure they'll
Jeff and Julia, yes,
yeah, oh, they're the best.
they're great.
Um, Awesome. Well, moving on here, I'm curious a little bit about as you got into the implementation. Like, obviously, you had a priority around this. You said it was great that your leadership had a priority to kind of improve the standard operations here. But I know in practice, what you're doing is you're rolling out changes to the ways that individuals in your maintenance program operate. And standardization can be really tough when people are used to doing things a certain way. What resistance, if any, did you run into rolling any of this out?
This is an interesting topic because this was a very real concern of mine from the start of all this. As I mentioned, I was in the plants, boots on the ground for many years, so I've been on the other side of this, which I also think puts me at somewhat of an advantage to help roll all this out as I can relate to it. I think the biggest thing that I've been keeping in my mind is just keeping it simple. From the amount of assets you set up to the number of PMs you create to even like the contents of the SOPs. It just needs to be simple. Otherwise, users will will naturally find an easier way to do it, or even worse, find an unsafe shortcut. One example that has come to mind with this is, we have a industrial lawnmower at a facility, pretty simple. It's got 100+ page manual. So rather than copy pasting that maintenance section into the procedure, we trimmed it down into a manageable 16 line item checklist for the guys to do, and we attach the manual as a reference point. It's just a lot easier to swallow where you do some of the trimming up front rather than just, okay, here's the 400-page manual, go do the maintenance stuff. So that's kind of been my mantra with this entire system, is we have to get buy-in from the maintenance techs and the actual users to make any sort of headway. So we have to make it simple. Another thing that has helped me is I made a point to build a relationship with each user face to face. This has helped me as well as them to improve the process. So, they feel comfortable telling me when something isn't going to work, or if they have a better way to do it, or even taking criticism if they need coaching on utilizing the system. That way these guys can feel a part of the process, and they absolutely are a part of it. And I rely on these guys to use it and work with me to improve it.
That's awesome. I'm curious if you had any. What has the feedback been from your frontline techs? Like and this is not it's not a soft looking for a softball answer. Like good and good and bad. Give us the real deal.
It has, I would say, been very well received for all the plants. So again, I'm about 7 plants in. Others, some of those 7 has received it better than others. I won't lie to you there, but for the majority of it, a lot of good reception from the maintenance techs, the biggest users, the plant managers and the directors. A lot of good feedback from them on where we can do like the reporting side and keep an eye on what the maintenance techs are doing. And even from all the operators or the technicians that don't necessarily have access to this system, we've provided a request portal for them to share their voice and their concerns with the leadership team, the maintenance team, so that way they can they have a voice and they can share their concerns and get things repaired or improved. So I would say from the top down, it's really been well received. On a flip side, I think it's been a change, right? It's been a little more documentation work. It's been a little bit more computer work or iPad or phone work, which, in a real life plant, you don't necessarily have that time to, stop what you're doing and enter a work order, and document everything. So I think that's what we're still working on, and we're continuously improving on, is just finding that time to document everything and record what you're doing. And we're explaining to everyone, this is going to help you guys in the long run, the maintenance guys in the long run, to be able to better troubleshoot the equipment. And what happened 3 years ago with this particular piece of equipment, the more information we can get on it, the better for maintenance techs in particular, and Hawkins in the long run.
Yeah, you're highlighting a few things that I wanted to ask you about, Joe, and that's specifically like what features or functions have been helpful to encourage that adoption and collaboration with your team. You mentioned a few things like the checklists and attachments, or even in-app comments. Like, how would you say those have been received or utilized across the teams?
Again, it varies by plant, but I would say for the most part, a, a great adoption. I try to recommend upfront, put as much information in there as possible. You don't need to write a whole novel on it, but just key points of what you're doing, to trigger memories down the road. Pictures speak 1,000 words. So a few plants have done like before and after pictures, which I've highlighted and encouraged. And even there's file attachments you can put in there. So there's a lot of features within MaintainX to help you get all that information in.
That's awesome. Maybe moving on from kind of the implementation, I know you're still in the process of kind of rolling this out super widely, but I'm wondering, today, what sort of results you've seen already from standardizing, and those could be, qualitative. I think some of the feedback, but also quantitative. If you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we're about 1 year into implementation, and we're doing one location at a time. So 7 locations over the last year. So we're purposefully going a little bit slower. So these plants are all at varying levels of usage across Hawkins. So, but that being said, I've been very pleased with the adoption of the program. For one example is that we've had like an OSHA audit or an EPA audit at a couple of these facilities where we've shown this program to them and they've been impressed. So, they asked for, show me your maintenance records on this particular piece of equipment. We pull up MaintainX and we show them, here are the work orders, here's the inspection guidelines that we followed, here's the maintenance technician's signature, and it's all there in a nice, easy to follow manner. So that it's been immediately helpful on the compliance side for Hawkins. Another benefit I kind of touched on earlier is like the cooling tower example is we've identified and closed many gaps when it comes to maintenance by just adding PMs to those facilities. And I'm sure there will be many more examples of that and more positive results as we continue to get to all the other facilities and continue to improve.
Anything that surprised you that you weren't expecting out of rolling this out?
I think it has taken longer than I would have expected. When I first met with the MaintainX sales guys and the team there, they had this really rigid, not rigid, but a schedule or a Gantt chart about how these facilities are going to go. And I was all for it, and a year later we're only 7 facilities in. I think that surprised me, but I'm happy with the detail that we've put in and the the user participation that we've had. So I wouldn't force it. Telling my past self, don't force this. I'm happy with the progress that we've made.
That
Great.
actually kind of touches on, Joe, a question that came in from the chat, and is how do you manage the scheduling and tracking of maintenance activities across your multiple sites? So I heard don't force it. Anything else that you would
Yeah.
add to that?
The first site took us the longest naturally. We were getting familiar with the program and how we wanted to roll all this out. So we definitely took our time with that program, and we got many people involved from the leadership side, and like, here's how this is going to look, and here's the level of detail we needed to go to. When it comes to like asset hierarchy and how these PMs are going to be set up. So I think that's kind of how our approach was, is we took a little bit longer and more time and more detail up front, which has proven to be very helpful down the road as we get to these other facilities, where we can now just, copy paste a lot of these practices that we've implemented in these newer plants.
That
I
makes
think
sense.
I think saw part of that question also was around do you use a single org or multi-org structure? And I think I know that you use a multi-org structure, since we were
Yep.
working on global
Yeah,
procedures.
we have the enterprise. Yep.
Yeah. And have you started, out of curiosity, have you started using any of the global reporting features as well, or is that?
I think we're starting to get to that. My main priority has been implementing. So I think we're getting through a lot of that, and now it's more just getting the implementation done and copy pasting a lot of these over. But the next step is to start getting all that information in, and be able to report on a lot of these, all the data that we've compiled.
Got it. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Joe, I'd love to know a bit more when we're talking about the success or kind of the results you're seeing. And one big thing that we always work with our customers to define are those KPIs, or the specific metrics that are the most important to your team. So would there be any that you would highlight here when you were tracking kind of the success of the standardization project?
I think a big one when it comes to the standardization is just the work order completion, a very simple one. After each of these facilities is rolled out, I know there are loads of PMs entered, so as long as those get completed, you can safely say that the standards were being followed. Also within those PMs, we've added signature blocks, which naturally bind those users to their work. So that's also been helpful. I think another KPI that we've been interested in is just problematic assets and how many reactive work orders are contributed to those assets. So if we have, I'll go back to a cooling tower. If we have 9 reactive work orders on this cooling tower, we know we might have a little bit of an issue with this. We need to get more eyes on it, or more frequent PMs, etc. But we're still kind of working through what the exact KPIs that Hawkins is interested in, but those are a couple of the ones that we've been focusing on.
Yeah, that works. And I mean, it definitely sounds like after about a year of this, you're getting a sense for what you want to do in measuring success. You've mentioned you use reporting. You're interested in global dashboards, which is the multi-org reporting function that we have as well. So really excited to keep in touch around how that's been useful for you. And I think, from this point, we can talk a bit more about what's next.
Yeah. Yeah, Joe, I'd love to hear a little bit about what's coming up, what's next for your standardization efforts specifically. What are the areas you're still looking to improve?
Yeah, well, we're finishing out implementation. So once all the plants are on this program, then we have all this raw data to analyze, which I believe is the next step for us, to try to get ahead of any of these issues before they happen rather than reactively. So shift our mindset towards that predictive and preventive maintenance approach. For example, if we start seeing the lifespan of a poly tank start failing around 20 years, so let's plan on replacing that tank before that 20-year mark. We can plan around it, we can budget for it. I've been in plenty of those situations where we have a tank or any asset fail, and it's just a heartache on everyone's plate. It's going to be very stressful for everyone involved to replace that, and the manufacturer might have a lead time. So the goal is to try to plan accordingly before any of these pieces of equipment fail. So that's the next big step with all this, is to get ahead of all reactive maintenance and shift it towards that preventive side.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
We also have a few more questions from the audience, and one for you, Joe, specifically around, I guess, what stood out to you about MaintainX and what made you choose us in terms of features. It looks like this person is using Maximo, so maybe if you are familiar with that, you can compare it.
Yep, I'm familiar with Maximo. Overall, I looked at and researched about 12 or so different programs in the CMMS world. MaintainX stood out to me because it was the simple, user-friendly side of things. It had all the features we needed from a regulatory standard with, electronic signatures and things like that for our more strictly regulated portions of the company. The salesmen and the staff were very easy to work with. The customer service side of that was beyond a lot of the other ones I looked at. So that was a huge plus as well. And I asked a ton of questions as I got into this program, which was another positive. As I kept working into this program, I kept wanting to play with it more, and I got more excited as I got into it. But I remember the salesman, he was an expert, just like all the other people I've worked with in MaintainX. And he sent me videos on how to do things, and responded within just less than a day for the most part. And the customer service was very good.
We love to hear that. That's I'm glad that's been your experience. Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up the user friendliness and kind of touching on your next steps a little bit. It's like you're looking to analyze that data, but the data that you're able to analyze is only as good as the data you get in from the front end, right? So I think
Yep.
we find that ultimately it's hopefully a really successful program because of that, like, end user and technician experience for you.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yep.
One other question we have here in the chat was, how do you best manage asset naming conventions to make it easier to identify similar assets when using multi-asset work orders? And I don't know if you've been exposed. This is a recently launched feature, so I don't know if you've had a chance to use multi-asset work orders, but
We've used it a little bit, but not much. But the asset naming convention was one of those things where we went through a lot of iterations and changes with all that. And we tried to keep it as intuitive as possible. So if a tank is tank 1, we named it tank 1 pump, or tank 1 filter housing, tank 1 piping. So it very intuitive to the user on, okay, I'm standing at tank 1 and this pump is not working. I need to put a work order in. Okay, go to tank 1 asset and find the pump. So yeah, the user-friendly and simplistic mindset is throughout this entire process, and that's what we strive for.
Awesome.
Great. Well, this has been great. I mean, thank you so much, Joe, for taking the time with us. Thank you, everyone, for submitting your questions. We love to see the engagement and interest from everyone here. So I think with that, I don't see any other questions that came in. I'd love to land on a few, I guess, ending points. And so with that, I'll just share my screen briefly and make sure that, yes, great. Cool. So, yeah, before we jump off, just want to share a few important links with everyone here on the call. First is to please check out our MaintainX Academy. It's packed with certifications, guides, courses, and videos to really help you immerse yourself into everything we talked about today and so much more around MaintainX. So it's a really great place to start in terms of getting up to speed and deeper into our functionality and into our product. And then, of course, for joining the conversations in our MaintainX community, where we can chat and learn with each other. So sharing best practices, learning from your peers is a great opportunity for everyone here to share with each other. And then also, if you want to speak with someone at MaintainX, you heard from Joe directly, just the shout out from